Welcome, and thank you, Coach Bobby, for first of all jumping on and talking to me today about strength training because I'm so very passionate about it. But I also want to say thank you for being part of Rulon Racing as an athlete, but as a new coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am so excited for this because I think it's something that Rulon Racing needs. And I love what you have shown me as an athlete, but I love what you have shown me as a coach. And so today, I want to talk to you a little bit about you as an athlete, as a coach, as a CrossFit owner. But I also want to talk to and educate our followers and people about strength training for triathletes. So, are you ready?
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, tell me a little bit about you as an athlete.
Yeah, so as far as me as an athlete, I was a firefighter for about 12 years. And when I was going through the fire academy, that was when I actually started endurance sports. I needed a way to stay in shape, and I hated to run. I figured I needed to figure it out. And so I looked for a challenge, and the first challenge was going out and doing a 5K race. And I did it. Didn't kill me. And that was the beginning of a terribly long, challenging life of endurance. It just slowly built from there, and the running increased in distance and speed, and picked up with cycling after an injury, and swimming after that, after just looking for another challenge. And things have just grown. It's gotten more and more exciting. It's taken me around the world and around the country, and met tons of people like yourself and the athletes of our team, and it's been great.
Well, tell me about, and this is, it's funny because you hear a lot of people saying like, oh, I hated running, and so I started it, but you should tell your story about swimming.
Yeah. So swimming, I literally did not know how to swim until I was about 20, let's say 22, somewhere in there. When I was a kid, I wasn't able to put my head underwater. I had tubes in my ears and ear infections basically until I was like 7 or 8, like nonstop. And so I just gave up on trying to swim as a kid. My mom was a swim instructor, and she tried, and it wasn't something we could do. And I just gave up on it until later in life. I was competitive in the duathlon world, and I was approached to join a team based out of Sacramento doing triathlons. And it was a requirement that I had to do triathlons and not just duathlons. And they gave me about 6 months to get ready. And they said, if you can do it, cool. If you can't, thanks for trying. And so luckily I had my wife and some friends help me out, and we figured it out in about 6 months. Went from zero formal swim training to doing my first half Ironman successfully. So
that's fantastic. Which half did you do?
I did a half in Lake Berryessa, Napa area.
Oh,
yeah.
Very good.
So it was a Hits Napa. So.
Oh yeah. Do they still have those anymore? Hits?
They do. Yeah, it's a fun little smaller type race.
Yeah.
So
there's some hits in Texas, but to be honest with you, I haven't seen them as of recently.
Yeah, it's a smaller company, but they put on great races. They usually set up a whole weekend where every distance sprints to fulls. It's amazing. Yeah. So tons of people get out there.
Very good. Well, yeah, I love that story because I think so many triathletes resonate with that because a lot of people do not know how to swim. I mean, I worked with Anna, who I saw her swimming, and she's like, I want to do an Ironman. And after I saw her swimming, I'm like, we have work to do. So
it's scary, but it's with the right coach, with the right systems in place, and the passion, just the wanting to do something that you can't do or people tell you can't do. That drives me. I don't like being told I can't do something. I'm at least going to try.
I think that's why we work so well together. I mean, we got the flat bill hat, the glasses, and then when somebody tells us that we can do something, we're like,
Yeah, bring it.
Love it. Cool. All right. So then tell me a little bit about your coaching background.
Yeah. So my coaching background literally started when I was a kid. My father was a Division I baseball coach at Cal State, Sacramento. So I grew up on college campuses in weight rooms, traveling to different universities, and just learning from other coaches. I coached high school baseball camps as a kid. When I was 12, 13 years old, I was coaching 17, 18-year-olds. So from a very early age, I had that drive, that ability to instruct and share knowledge. But I didn't really know where that was going to go in life. And as my racing kind of progressed, I was reached out to by one of my coaches, and he's like, "Hey, do you want to learn some stuff?" And I said, "Sure." And so I got my first certification as a endurance coach in 2011. And that's what really started my coaching. And then 2 years later, we started, me and my wife at the time, my girlfriend, started a CrossFit gym in our garage. We wanted a place to work out, and we had some friends that came over, and it grew so fast that we didn't know what was happening. And that garage gym's now turned into our full-time job. I left my job as a firefighter. My wife left her job as an educator, and we run a gym full-time here in Wairika, Northern California area. So that's the main part of my coaching, is we run a CrossFit gym. But I've never lost that side of the endurance coaching. That's always been my passion. That's always been my main focus. So I, over the years, have slowly taken on a handful of athletes running, obstacle racing, triathlon, cycling, and just done what I can to help different athletes in different ways, and giving them that knowledge and helping them build that passion to challenge themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's grown to the point where now that's my real fun time of my day, is spending time talking to my athletes. And so now moving forward is getting the opportunity to coach with Jen and be part of the Rulon racing team, and seeing where that can go.
Agreed. And that was like the next question about telling yourself about a little bit about a CrossFit as a gym owner. But I think how many people do you have at your gym currently?
We currently have about 130 athletes in our gym doing full CrossFit. And then we have an additional 20 or so athletes around the country that we do programming for.
That's great.
My wife also does nutrition coaching. I do the endurance coaching. So we try to be as well-rounded, a full package, to get people to their goals. All the goals are different, so each person needs a little different program.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that's what just talking to you more and more and learning more about you as a human being, as an athlete, as a coach, it's just all of a sudden things started lining up, and and you were like, why do I need to start something that you've already started, and how can I help? And I'm like, because I need the help. So yeah,
it's been a great partnership so far, because it's like you just said, I was starting to build my own endurance company, and it's like, why do something different when I can work as a team? It's such a better setup. So
agreed. Excellent. All right, so let's talk about the fun part, the strength part. It's interesting because this poster behind me is from my grandfather from World War II, and it's the Army way of working out. And it's
awesome.
Such a classic, and like there's burpees in there's like bear walks and bear crawls, and I'm like, this is all the stuff we do already, it's they were way ahead of their time, I guess.
Yeah.
So anyway, so my very first question is, why should you do strength training during the on season of triathlon training?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I see with athletes in the endurance world is burnout and injuries based on imbalancements in the body. Athletes get so focused in those three disciplines, the run, the bike, the swim, that they're building strength and they're building fitness, but in such limited ways that their body starts to break down in those muscle groups that aren't being utilized. And so where the injury isn't the muscles that are being utilized for the swim, the bike, the run. It's those supportive muscles, those smaller muscle groups that end up having this little tiny injury. And because of that little tiny injury, our whole position of our body changes, and then we end up injuring ourselves. So our big focus with strength is just balancing out that body and keeping that body moving throughout the year so that you don't have those little injuries. So I got the opportunity to talk to a new athlete yesterday, and he was asking why do we do strength? What's the purpose of it? And literally I told him it's not to build strength. It's not to be deadlifting 500 pounds or back squatting a ton of weight. It's just to keep those little muscles in the body, just keep everything balanced out, and keep the body moving in ways other than we do nonstop with the endurance training.
Agreed. And I think that was the biggest lesson learned that I've had, is that, I did 4 Ironmans. I took that 8-year sabbatical, found CrossFit, found strength again, because my coach back in the days was trying to get me to strength train. I'm like, I don't have time for it. And now, I'm back to it again, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes sense, because, that posterior chain is so weak. My glutes aren't firing, because I'm in that forward motion all the time. I'm using the quads, I'm using the front, and I think it's so crucial for triathletes to do on season, we always say, off season, but you got to do it on season.
Totally. Yeah. You can't just give up on that, because we got to keep the systems all moving correctly. Because you look at a full Ironman or even a half Ironman, we're on the bike for 3 to 6, 7 plus hours. And it's like, what is the biggest factor that's affecting our time, our speed, is our aerodynamics, our position on that bike. The difference between being in those aero bars and sitting up as high as possible because that back's blown out is a huge difference. So if we have the mobility and the strength to hold those positions, we're gonna move a lot easier. It's a lot easier to be a little bit more aerodynamic than pushing a lot more power. And those are things that are going to take training other than just being on the bike all the time. That's going to help us, but also building that supportive strength.
100%. Yeah, I think that's something that I really missed going into Kona. Because I qualified, and then 8 weeks later I'm in Kona. So I wasn't doing much strength training at all. And I remember at mile 90, mile 100, my back was just hurting. And I know it's because it was the lack of strength. I was focusing on getting leaner to qualify. So we all have these, I guess it's seasons of change, but that really, there's a picture of me sitting out of my aero bar because I was so uncomfortable, and it was because of lack of strength.
Yeah. I love when an athlete shows me how their position is on the bike. They're like, look how aero I can get. Look how far I dumped my aero bars down. I'm like, okay, how long can you sit in a plank hold? 2 minutes. Okay, so you're going to hold that position. It's basically a plank hold for 6 hours. Yeah, nice try. So that's so true. So we don't think about how much that core engagement, how much that supportive strength is going to benefit us in just holding a position. It's not even doing work. It's just holding a position.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's such a great analogy. 2 minute. You can't do a 2-minute plank, but you can hold for 6 hours on the bike. Yeah, that's
good luck.
Yeah, good luck. Very cool.
So
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's just something that it's missed so often, and it's so important.
Yeah, agreed. So one of my most popular blogs was the top 5 lifts for triathletes. And over the last couple of years, I've changed it up. What 5 movements are your favorite as a coach? Yeah, as a coach, because
Yeah,
that's
so
definitely might be different.
I'm gonna even simplify it down to 3 movements.
Okay.
So I have one that's kind of a complex movement. This is one of my favorite movements. It's called a thruster. It's taking a bar or an object. It could literally be your hands is all you're trying to move, but you're starting in a standing position with either a bar on your shoulders or on your back, and you're lowering yourself down into a full squat. So one, it's testing mobility. It's getting those hips, those knees, those ankles all moving. It's also getting a lot of engagement from glutes, hamstrings, quads, calves, everything in the lower body to move, to support, to get into that squat. And then out of that bottom position of the squat, we're driving ourselves all the way back up through that squat, and then carrying that momentum to move that object or that bar overhead into a press position. So now we start to get extension of the shoulders, the elbows, the torso. We're getting the core to be engaged to balance that weight overhead. It's a simple movement that utilizes the whole body. There's both contraction and extension of the whole body through that movement. So it's so simple, it's so time compacted, and yet so effective for every part of the body. So that's my number one.
And I hate
So
those.
yeah, there and people look at it, especially the barbell version, what you'll see in the CrossFit world, and it's a complex movement, but it can be simplified, like I said, by getting rid of the bar and just moving your hands and your body and just getting yourself to extend and contract into that squat and control yourself to that position. So
Yeah.
that's number one.
Very good. All right.
Yep.
Number 2.
So number 2 would be a leg raise, preferably a hanging leg raise. So if you had a pull-up bar, you'd be holding on to that pull-up bar or dip station, supporting yourself, and you're either doing a knee raise or a leg raise, but you're just controlling that core, controlling that hip flexor, and supporting yourself through that leg raise. It's going to help us gain a little bit more anterior front side strength and support. I like the holding ourselves on the pull-up bar just to gain a little bit of grip strength and get some extension, get some mobility, get some range of motion in that arm, that shoulder, especially going into the swim. We see a lot of people suffer from not getting that shoulder mobility to get that full extension overhead. So if we can just hang and then activate that shoulder and get some mobility, some support in that shoulder, we're gonna benefit in the swim as well as other movements.
Nice. Because I think too, when I think of leg raises, I think of that old school in the gym, the seated one, right?
Yeah.
You could sit there and you could lift your legs. And so that's a good idea. But I do like that idea, like you pull those lats down and you engage that core and you lift whether it's knee or legs out. I like that.
Yeah, we see so many people, especially in the swim, where they just don't have that core engagement. They can't support and everything. Legs are going one way, arms are going all over the place. And if we can start to lock that core in, that's everything. The core is the support. That's our base.
I always think of those, when I see people do kipping pull-ups or when they first start off doing kipping pull-ups, like they're sort of like all over the place. And I think of those marketing funny guys that people that are like, they just flop all over the place. It's like, you don't want to do that in the swimming. Like that marketing piece, that marketing guy doesn't have a core because he's got, anyways.
Yeah.
Totally tangent there.
And that's a quick note. With the CrossFit world, a lot of people look at it and they're like, it's just too much. It's too complicated. It's crazy. They're just chaos. And that all comes down to having the correct coach, a good coach that's managing what you're doing. We try to pack a lot into your time and into your movements, but it's only effective if the mechanics are there first. So We don't want complex movements. We don't want intense speed or weight unless the mechanics are there first.
Smart. All right, and number 3. So we have thruster, we have hanging leg raises. Last
Yep. Last one. So we're going posterior side. So glutes, hamstrings, lower back. So it's a good morning.
Yes.
So good morning is locking your core into a solid position, getting that torso nice and upright, and then slowly hinging yourself at the hips, leaning yourself forward and supporting yourself with that back, that glute, and that lower hamstring. It's a movement that I see too often done with a lot of weight. I personally love to do it with a PVC pipe.
Yeah.
I don't do it with any weight 90% of the time because it's about learning to engage all of that posterior chain, those glutes, those hamstrings, and that lower back, so that when I go onto the bike, that's going to be transferable training. So I'm not lifting a bunch of weight when I'm sitting in the aero bars. I'm just trying to support my own body weight. So that's a movement I use a lot. It just kind of wakes everything up. It gets you to the point where you're going, yep, my hamstrings are working, my glutes are working, nothing's injured. I can get on the aero bars for a couple hours.
Yeah. So. I like good mornings even with the band.
Yes.
So
yeah.
There's around my feet and then around my neck and do it that way.
Yeah. There's so many ways you can do these movements, and there's too often coaches or programs that say, here's the way you have to do it, and this is what you need to do, and that's not acceptable. There's so many ways to do things, and you have to find what works best for you and your needs.
For sure.
Yep.
Very good. Oh, I love those. Those are good movements. Now, I don't know about the thruster, but
Yeah, just keeping it simple. So full body movement, front side, back side.
Love it. Perfect. So then, so in the triathlon world, and a lot of people may or may not know this, but we do something called periodization. It's very well known in all the other worlds of it. What you're pretty much doing is you're peaking to your A race. So an A race might be Ironman 70.3, a full Ironman, that type of thing. So the question for you is, when you are programming strength workouts, do you do periodization for your athletes?
Yes and no. It's a little bit different than it would be with the endurance side of stuff. I would say it's more blocked out versus like a progression. The progression is going to be different based on each individual athlete. But yeah, it's what we're doing different times of the year are going to look completely different. So like I was saying, mid-season, we're just trying to balance the body out. Off-season, we're trying to build the body up. Because we do break down a lot of muscle tissue throughout the year. So we have to train a little bit different times of the year.
That makes sense.
So yeah, there is a pattern to it. It's just a little bit different.
Yeah. And I think too, I think a lot of people, don't realize that there's something called periodization or doing blocks of training. And I think some people just have that mentality of that they have to go 24/7, and you can't do that in the triathlon world, and you definitely can't do that in the strength world, because at one point, injury, overuse, fatigue, burnout will happen.
Yeah. The biggest thing is just looking at the big picture and what the key training is for the time of year. Is the focus to build strength? Is the focus to gain speed? Is the focus to gain endurance? And you have to figure out what that key element is at each time of the year, and that's going to determine how the strength training side of it's going to go, because we can't back squat 400 pounds and then not be able to do our run the next day. So you have to really figure out what the key training is. It happens so often where people are like, I want to do strength training 6 days a week. I'm like, well, are you going to make all of your runs and your bikes and your swims? No. Then no, you can't strength train that much. In the off season, maybe we can talk about that, but not when you're 2 months out from an Ironman.
Yeah. I remember I wanted to do the CrossFit Open, and then I was getting ready for a half Ironman. And of course I did. It was one of the workouts. It was it 150 wall balls?
Yeah.
Karen. and
Okay.
then like 100 double unders, and then you end it with muscle ups, which I didn't have muscle ups. So my goal was to get through everything and do some muscle up attempts. Well, I did
Yeah.
all of that, and then I went running 2 days later for my long run, and I had to run 90 minutes. It was an epic fail.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
So yeah, and yeah, and it happens. We all make mistakes, and that's the benefit of having a coach, is the coach is going to say, hey, like, that's not a good idea.
right.
But if you make those mistakes, just own up to it. We're all adults.
Yeah.
We live and learn. We go, hey, let's not make that mistake in the future. Because if we repeat that mistake over and over, that's where we're going to have that injury.
For sure. For sure. Funny. Very good. All right. And then I do want to keep this short because I do respect everybody's time. What are 3 tips for people who are triathletes and they do want to do strength training?
Yep. So the biggest thing is learn the proper technique.
Love it.
That's number one. Is don't just see a video and just try to replicate it, because it may be completely different. Reach out to people that can actually invest some time in teaching you how to do things correctly, because if you're not, it can send you in the wrong direction. So make sure you're doing things correctly. Make sure you're doing the right things. Make sure you're doing strength training that's not going to take away from your program, but is actually going to benefit your program. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be a lot of time. Just figure out what's going to be the most important for you, or have that coach that's going to build that program for you. And then the last thing is proper timing. Just make sure you're not loading too much in the beginning of the week and then just burn out by the end of the week. Spread that training out. Really pay attention to what you're putting into your day.
Love it. Love it. I think, and I think so many people think, oh, I need to do legs. So then they overdo legs. And then once again, you're having trouble, building those intervals or whatever it might be, on the bike or even on the run. So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Timing, not just days, but time of the day. Like,
yeah.
Do you do your strength before or after your workout? That's important, and each day has a different requirement, and that's more than just, oh, I can always do my strength before, I can always do my strength after. It doesn't always work out that way.
Right. I love it. That's so true. I mean, I remember, was it one time a couple months ago, like you and I chatted, then I had to do interval work, and then I went to SoulFit. And like, it was like leg day at SoulFit. I'm like, that's not happening, because I had no legs left because of my interval work, and so I was like, I'm just going to go light today. Yeah. but I should have spreaded it out, it was really, just life got in the way like it always does. Right. Cool. All right. So that's so your top 3 lifts or exercises: thruster, hanging leg raise, good morning. Then your top 3 tips for people who want to do strength: proper technique, proper timing, and make sure the right, what was it, the second one?
The right movements. Something that's going to be beneficial to your training. Beneficial.
Yeah. Cool. So muscle ups aren't really beneficial for my training, are they?
Not really.
I still don't get that. I have never gotten a muscle up. Just a little tap. I've been close, but it's one of my stupid human tricks that I love to do. So it's some I'm good at, but not beneficial. Not beneficial at all. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like when you, let's say for example, somebody goes to a CrossFit gym and you're working on your muscle ups, or you're working on, and you're a triathlete, and they want you to work on your muscle ups. You could just say, as the athlete, you could say, you know what, that's really not beneficial for me. What can I do differently? That coach should adjust for you. Totally. Yeah. If you have a good coach, they're going to go, yeah, that doesn't benefit your training. So let's do something completely different. Yeah. And don't get sucked into the peer pressure of having to do what other people are doing. Yes.
So
Don't turn on your watch when you start doing a WOD, that type of thing. I've seen people do that. I'm like, you're turning on your watch? What? Like, the time's right there,
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. We're good. Very cool. Well, thanks for jumping on board with me. Where can people find you? Like your social media channels and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so Instagram's probably the biggest place I'm on. Would be it's Coach_Bobby Smith. Keep it simple. And you can find me on Facebook. It's Bobby Smith. I'm located in Wairika, California, if you want to search that. And then you can always find me on jenrulon.com. So that's the new place.
What's your email?
Email is bobby@jenrulon.com.
Very cool. And then what's the name of your CrossFit gym in case somebody wants to check that out?
Yeah, it's CrossFit Northern Limits. And our website is crossfitnorthernlimits.com. Yeah, drop in if you guys are ever passing through Southern Oregon, Northern California, right off Interstate 5. Can't miss us. Little tiny town, big blue building.
Love it. And your photos are just absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah.
But then you tell me about the weather. I'm like, I'm sort of.
Yeah. Great short spring. Other than that, super hot, super cold.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you, Bobby, for jumping on. I am super excited to have you as a coach with the Rulon Racers. And if people are interested, Bobby and I would love to chat with you guys. If you are interested in jumping on Rulon Racing Team, I am taking a break from coaching right now to do some other things, but I got Bobby to help me out. So with that said, have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Bye, everyone.